Okay, now we need the concept of action arenas. We already looked at institutions. So, what are action arenas and how is the institutional analysis done? What is an action arena? An action arena occurs whenever individuals interact, exchange goods, or solve problems. Some examples are teaching a class, playing a baseball game, having dinner. We already discussed this as an institution where repeated interactions happen. Uh, it's in the class, playing a basketball or baseball game, cricket, whatever, and even having dinner one on one in a group. The rules, the norms, they are always implicit, as we said before. People don't even have to think about it. They usually know what to do or not to do, and how the interactions go when we share the check and when someone else pays. Generally, everything is fairly clear, unless it's a new situation in which rules and norms can be quickly made clear as well. But also, rules are something that are set and they are not immutable, as we said before. But norms often depend on the cultural background, social background, socio-economic background, and so on, especially in a group dynamic like sharing a dinner, for example. So let's look at some schematic. The focal level of analysis for action arena and institutional level analysis. An action arena looks something like this. We will see in a minute what exogenous variables are that constrain the action arena in some way, and it could be this stadium in which you are playing baseball or cricket. It could be the spectators that buy the ticket to watch or come to watch for free, and so on. And action arena then interacts with it sets up the interactions between the players, the stakeholders, the actors, the agents, whatever is the situation, and it is meant to bring out an outcome. It could be just a dinner, the social get-together, or a classroom where you learn and you take exams. So there is evaluative criteria that are set that define interactions and also determine outcomes, and they can have a feedback to the action arena and the exogenous variables. So if this is not clear, then you can look at this as more detailed one. Framework for institutional analysis requires exogenous variables to be known. Could be some participants that are in an action situation. Again, you can imagine many of them. There are biophysical conditions involved as exogenous variables. There are attributes of the community in which you are participating and interacting in the action arena, and there are rules in use that are implicit or explicit based on what the institution is which you are analyzing. Then the box that has participants and action situation is going to define the interactions and the outcomes with evaluative criteria, again being in operation explicitly or implicitly. So when you have a dinner with someone, you are not necessarily meeting for work. You may be just meeting for social outing. It could be a friend, could be somebody, a friend's friend, it could be a group at work, it could be family, and so on and so forth. So the outcome depends on whether it's just social interaction or a meeting with a certain discussion, and so on and so forth. So group dynamic may be just to celebrate something at the office or someone's birthday. You can imagine infinite diversity of interactions and our expected outcomes with evaluative criteria going together with them, and the exogenous variables of course depend on that as well. So if you imagine a framework applied to taking a course, for example, as a specific example of in arena, action area, and evaluative criteria, then you have exogenous variables which are now clearer. University campus is one, attributes of student population is the other one, and university regulations as to how the schedules are set, who teaches which course, what the attendance requirements are, what the uniform or clothing may be, what may be allowed, what may not be allowed, what are the types of fees you have to pay, whether you get financial aid. You can imagine many exogenous variables that determine who are the students. Of course, professors are selected, and in their job they may have teaching assistants who may be doing it to learn, or they may be paid to do this to help the professor with grading and teaching, taking attendance, whatever. And then there is the course, which is the action which feeds back between these actors, students, professors, teaching assistants, and it involves lectures. Typically could be lab work, could be field work, could be discussions, whatever, and that outcome then expected is a grade that you get, which is based on evaluative criteria and the syllabus. The syllabus is set typically for a particular course to be covered in the length of the course. Could be short course, full semester, full year if it's in a school, with its midterm exams, final exams, projects, data analysis, etc., and the syllabus is to be covered within a given time, and the grades feed back to how the interactions or the action arena is affected, and it may also feed back with evaluation of the professors to the exogenous variables at the university level and university regulations. Many places only the students get to evaluate the professors, but these days the professors also can provide feedback on students overall to make sure that over time the professor gets to have a say as well, right? So what is the context of the action arena? The action arena does not occur in a vacuum. Participants are interacting in an action situation which is affected by a broader context. As mentioned above, this broader context is defined by three clusters: the rules used by participants to order their relationship, who's the teacher, who's the teaching assistant, who's the professor, and who's the university official, who's in charge of admissions, fees, dorms, etc. Okay, the biophysical world that are acted upon, the biophysical world that are acted upon in these arenas, and the structure of the more general community within which any particular arena is placed. Right? You may be that you live on campus, so the outside world is not so directly connected to you, or you are commuting in, or you are living just around the campus but not on campus, and the community is generally seen as a university community, and it is placed in a certain setting in the biophysical world, has its fields, has its markets, has its bookstores, and so on and so forth. So you get the idea. In our analysis of case studies in this book, we make a distinction between rules on paper, so de jure, they're called de jure by the law, and rules in use, de facto, which actually is enforced. Let's say the rule is that every student must have at least 90% attendance, but then the teacher may decide that he or she will not enforce it very strictly. So then the jure and de facto are not exactly the same. There may be rules saying you should have certain number of homeworks and certain number of exams and certain way of deciding a grade. A grade can only be given to those who have above 90% of the score. The teacher may decide that he or she will do relative grading. So if highest grade is lower than 90, then the grade will depend on how the entire class did and who got the highest score, and that will determine where the A grade will start, and so on. Okay, it's not uncommon that in practice somewhat different rules are used at the work floor, in the classroom, or on the sports field than those officially written down on paper. A referee in a baseball game, or a cricket, or umpire in a cricket or basketball may not enforce every little rule in the book, may choose to ignore many, because if the official in charge starts enforcing every single rule, every little infraction, then the game may not proceed as fast, and the spectators may get bored, the players may get bored, and outcome may not be what you expect. Okay, for example, referee in a soccer match may not stop the game for each possible rule infraction, but judge whether the infraction is severe enough to stop the flow of the game and enforce penalties, right? So these are individual, somewhat subjective choices, but the idea is that if the referee is known to be fair, over time the players and the audience, the spectators, and the entire system, including the owners of the teams and so on, know that this referee is a good referee that makes good calls about severe infractions versus those that can be ignored on a day-to-day basis in a match, and so on. Okay, so these are combinations of rules and trust, and how the rules are applied on the field or on the floor or in a classroom. One of the main benefits that accrue to participants when the majority of the people follow the rules is the increased predictability of interactions. So with a referee, you will know that he may be very strict, or she may be very strict with offside, not so strict with a little push here and there, maybe very strict with flagrant fouls in a game, but not so strict with stealing the ball with a little nudge, and so on and so forth. Virtually all drivers in the US use the right side of the road to drive almost all the time, so left lanes are kept mostly vacant for people who want to pass and go ahead, so they can speed up, break the speed limit to get over to the front of the line for whatever reason. If such a rule were not obeyed frequently, and it's not rule that's written in the book, even though many places it says slow traffic should use the right lane or do not occupy the left lane, and so on, or it says left lane for passing only, and so on, or sometimes they're just norms. People know that they shouldn't sit in the left lane no matter how fast they're going. They should use it for passing and then get back onto the right lane, or the left lane should be left alone. So if such a rule were not obeyed frequently, imagine how difficult it would be to drive and how ineffective it would be to use the road. So if people are just going slow, let's say in all lanes, and people behind are trying to pass, then it can become very frustrating, and you can have traffic backing up because the front row is not going fast enough, or even following the speed limit and going slower than the speed limit, and so on, or if the ambulance wants to pass or a fire engine wants to pass, and so on and so forth. Knowing what to expect in interactions with others vastly improves the performance of many social systems, right? So depending on where you are, you will get norms that are used by certain communities. If you drive in New York, the rules may be similar to elsewhere, but the norms used by the drivers will be quite different. They are much more aggressive than, let's say, in a smaller state like Maryland or DC or Virginia versus Texas, and so on and so forth. So you know, when you drive in different places, that you know the rules of the road, you know the speed limits that are posted, and you know the rules that you cannot stay in the left lane forever, etc. And yet you will see that the local driving patterns very much depend on the norms that are typically used by that particular state or city, and that defines your exogenous variable in addition to the action arena and the players on the action arena. Okay.